Hi everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into a gripping story that shocked an entire village. A young girl named Tukai, with no memory of who she is, finds refuge with an elderly couple deep in the misty mountains. But peace doesn't last long when thugs suddenly break into their humble home, demanding to take her away. Fear spreads like wildfire. Who sent them? What secrets is Tukai hiding? And why is this quiet village suddenly on edge? Stay tuned to find out the chilling truth. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss what comes next. The early morning sunlight slipped gently through the wooden slats of the door, casting soft rays onto the simple wooden table in the modest thatched house. Old Lady Silver Hair, gleaming like morning mist, stirred a steaming pot of rice porridge on the stove. Her hands, thin and calloused from years of toil, moved with practiced care. Across from her sat Tukai, a young girl with eyes as clear and sparkling as a morning lake, though they held a faint trace of unspoken sadness. Her small hands clutched a warm bowl of porridge, the heat seeping through her palms and warming her heart. "Old lady, the porridge is ready," Tukai said softly, her voice gentle yet tinged with anticipation, as if each spoonful carried the shadow of her beloved old man whom she hoped would return today. Old Lady smiled, her eyes radiating boundless love, and carefully ladled the porridge into bowls. The two sat together, eating and chatting about the day's plan to sell chickens at the market. A chance to earn enough for rice, salt, and perhaps a few necessities for Tukai. But when the conversation turned to her old clothes, the ones she wore when she fell from a cliff years ago, Tukai fell silent. She lowered her head. Vague memories of the accident drifted back like dark clouds passing over a clear sky. She couldn't recall the details, only that they had saved her life. From that day, they became her family, her everything. Noticing Tukai's mood shift, Old Lady gently changed the subject. "Finish eating, then change to go to the market with me. Let's go early before the sun gets too strong." Tukai nodded, her eyes brightening again, though a quiet shadow lingered. Deep down, she carried a persistent fear that she was a burden, an extra mouth to feed in a household already stretched thin. But Old Lady's warm gaze and the gentle touch of her hand seemed to say, "You are never a burden." Their humble home, though simple, was warmer than any place Tukai had ever known. The morning market in the district buzzed with life. The air was filled with a lively mix of vendors' calls, haggling voices, and the chatter of laughter. Under the golden sunlight, Old Lady and Tukai stood beside a woven bamboo cage, holding two plump hens, their small hope for the day. Old Lady stood tall, her sharp eyes reflecting years of bargaining experience. Tukai, clutching her sleeve, watched nervously as potential buyers inspected the chickens. "These are good chickens, take them," Old Lady said firmly, her voice steady but hopeful. A middle-aged man shook his head, claiming the price of 120,000 jong per kilo was too high. "Out there, they're only 105,000, he said flatly. Tukai suddenly spoke up, her voice soft but resolute. "We raised these chickens ourselves, fed them corn and fresh greens. Their meat is delicious." Her words gave the man pause. A tense yet familiar haggling session followed, and they settled on 110,000 jong per kilo. Without a scale, the buyer borrowed one from a nearby stall. The chickens weighed exactly 4.5 kilos. He counted out 495,000 zhong, handing the notes to Old Lady one by one. Tuki stared at the money in Old Lady's hands, her heart caught between joy and regret. Months of care for those chickens had amounted to just a few paper bills. But those bills were hope. Hope for a few kilos of rice, perhaps medicine if needed. Old Lady tucked the money carefully into her inner pocket, her eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. Tukai stood still, recalling Old Lady's words. "We sell these, and we'll raise more." She nodded, but a quiet unease lingered, like a cold breeze sweeping through the dusty market. The noise of the crowd buzzed around them, but for Tukai, only the questions in her heart echoed, nameless worries about tomorrow, the next meal, and a future she couldn't yet see. Yet Old Lady held her hand tightly. Their steps were heavy as they left the market with an empty cage, but they were steady. The pocket held only a few 100,000 zhong, but their hearts carried a deep trust in each other. The market grew busier as the sun climbed higher, its rays now harsh and glaring over the colorful stalls. Old Lady and Tuki wove through the crowd, clutching the money earned from the chickens. They stopped at a familiar rice stall. Ba chose the cheapest kind, daring only to buy 2 kilos at 25,000 zhong per kilo. Her eyes lingered briefly on the better quality rice, but she held back. Every zhong mattered. Next, they paused at a stall selling cake. 2, please, Old Lady said quickly. 1 for Tuki, 1 for Old Man. A small treat after a tiring morning. Tuki protested softly. Old Lady, you don't have to. But Old Lady just smiled and pressed the cake into her hands. That smile brought a lump to Tukai's throat. She knew how precious every zhong was, yet Old Lady wanted her to have this small joy. At a clothing stall, Old Lady picked out a simple outfit for Tukai. You need something new to wear, she said. Tuki shook her head, insisting they shouldn't spend the money, but Old Lady smiled and patted her hand. Think of it as a gift. Wear it and stay warm. Tukai held the clothes, her heart tangled with emotions. It wasn't just an outfit. It was love, sacrifice, and Old Lady's unwavering devotion to her granddaughter. They bought a bit of salt, then quietly left the market. The sky had shifted toward noon. Tukai hugged the new clothes tightly, as if holding on to the warmth and love woven into them amidst their hard life. She knew well, this life was never easy, but as long as she had Old Lady and Old Man, she would keep going, not just to survive, but to live worthy of their love. The late afternoon sun blazed in hues of orange and red, as if setting the sky ablaze, casting long shadows over the small thatched house nestled by the rice fields. The air, heavy from a day of toil, seemed to soften. Inside, Old Lady and Tuki had just finished preparing a simple meal. Fragrant fried fish, a bowl of amaranth soup, and steaming rice cooked from the grains bought at the market. The kitchen still carried the faint smell of wood smoke. A breeze from the fields brought the scent of young rice, mingling with the distant clucking of chickens settling for the evening. Suddenly, the crunch of footsteps echoed from the path outside. Both Old Lady and Tuki looked up. Tukai leapt to her feet. Old Man's back! The steps were slow but steady, and then Ong appeared in the fading light, his shirt dusted with dirt, sweat staining his clothes, but his eyes still bright. In his hands was a pair of new sandals wrapped in old newspaper. For you, he said, his voice low and hoarse with fatigue. Tukai took them, her hands trembling. She clutched the sandals to her chest as if they were a treasure. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She slipped them on. They fit perfectly, as if made just for her. No words were needed. She felt the depth of love woven into that simple gift. The family gathered around the modest meal. Old Man shared stories of his long trip, selling herbal medicines in a neighboring village, earning a little money. His eyes sparkled with joy seeing Tukai eat heartily, her cheeks regaining a hint of color. Old Lady chimed in, recounting the chicken sale and the new clothes for Tukai, her voice a mix of pride and quiet worry. In the small kitchen, laughter rang out, easing the ever-present weight of exhaustion. Yet deep within Tuki, a nagging unease lingered. She ate well, dressed warmly, but always felt she owed Old Man and Old Lady something immense, something she didn't know how to repay. Every gift, every meal, every clasped hand reminded her she needed to be stronger, to honor their boundless love. The flickering oil lamp cast 3 shadows onto the wooden walls, a family not bound by blood, but tied by a love deeper than any kinship. Night fell. The house sank into silence, broken only by the hum of insects and the faint glow of the lamp. Old Man and Old Lady sat together, quietly recounting old stories. This time, the tale was not joyful. It was about Vun, their son, a source of both love and pain. Tukai listened silently, her heart tightening. Old Lady's voice softened, as if something caught in her throat. She spoke of a time when, with Old Man away, she had to report to the authorities as thugs came demanding Van's debts. The household was thrown into chaos. Old Man, his eyes reddening, recalled being ambushed by Vun and his delinquent friends, demanding money. When Old Man refused, Van pushed him down, snatched the cash, and fled. "I didn't recognize him anymore," Old Man whispered, as if to himself. Tuki bowed her head. She remembered confronting Van, urging him to leave his bad crowd and return to Old Man and Old Lady. He listened, nodded, promised. But then he vanished, like wind, like smoke. She felt powerless, though she cared for him and wished he'd return to being a good man. Outside, the night deepened. Darkness seemed to swallow everything, but in that small house, the light from the oil lamp and from their hearts burned steadfastly. A fiery afternoon. The sun, like a ball of flame, sank toward the horizon, gilding the quiet river. In another corner of town, a gang of thugs tore through the streets, searching for Van. Their leader, a man with a menacing glare, led a group of grim-faced lackeys. They grabbed one of Vaughn's old friends by the collar, who trembled as he led them to an abandoned house. "I told you, ever since he met that girl, he's gone," the man stammered. The leader gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with rage. "That girl, Tukai, right?" Without hesitation, they stormed toward Ongold Man and Old Lady Tom's house. Footsteps pounded, the wooden door burst open. Old Lady Tam spun around, startled, and Tuki froze. The leader stepped inside, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Where's Vun? Get him out here!" Tukai stepped in front of Old Lady, her heart racing, but her gaze steady. "I don't know where he is," she said, her voice firmer than her fragile frame suggested. The man roared, pointing at her. "Since you met him, he's been hiding. Where are you keeping him?" Tukai clenched her fists, lifting her chin. I only told him to stay away from you. I'm not hiding anyone. Old Lady Tom stepped forward, her frail hands shielding Tukai. There's no one named Voon here. Leave. But her words were like fuel on a fire. The gang began smashing furniture, tearing through every corner. Old Man Tom rushed in, joining Tuki to stop them, but the two were no match for the furious mob. Clubs swung, objects shattered, cries of pain mixed with chaotic shouts. Then silence fell. Old Man Tom and Tukai lay motionless on the dirt floor, blood seeping from their foreheads, clothes torn. The gang fled in panic, leaving the house in ruins, like the aftermath of a great storm. Old Lady Tom knelt beside them, tears falling silently. In that wreckage, one thing remained unbroken, their bond. Fragile as the flickering oil lamp, yet resilient as roots gripping the earth. That love kept them alive, kept them rising, no matter how cruel the storm. Tukai, a girl with no memory, is rescued by an elderly couple deep in the forest. They care for her as their own, despite their poverty. One day, a strange man storms in on a motorbike, demanding to take her away without proof. The couple refuses, sparking fear and tension in the entire village. Meanwhile, fragments of Tuki's traumatic past begin resurfacing, dark rooms, chains, and screams. She realizes she's not just lost, she's being hunted. Somewhere else, a mysterious man in a suit is quietly plotting to take back what's his. As love, protection, and hidden truths collide, Tuki must confront her forgotten past and decide whether to run, fight, or finally take control of her life. A suspenseful story of found family, deep scars, and the price of survival.